My name is Kim Magoon, and this is my PowerPoint for Criminal Justice Capstone. The first module in the Capstone was about in the 1960s when President Johnson addressed the issues facing Americans in regard to the crime and law enforcement. President Johnson expressed that all Americans were entitled to personal security. To achieve this goal, law enforcement and the government had the responsibility to preserve law and order, and almost 50 years later, President Obama addressed the same issues with forming a task force. He assembled this, and due to technology today, like body cams and cell phones, everything is documented in real time. In Essay 2, this model addressed areas such as the creation of the Miranda Act and how it was implemented in everyday police work. Also addressed unrest between citizens and the police in the 1960s to make sure they were addressed and never repeated. The area of juveniles and crime were also reviewed, and recommendations were given that we involve families, the family unit, to help strengthen our juvenile and give them a goal. The areas of juvenile justice were also reviewed to assure that they were given every opportunity to become responsible adults. In Essay 3, this module addressed the corrections in the 1960s and the role of the criminal justice system in the process and the rehabilitation of offenders. It also addressed organized crime and the role of the RICO Act of 1970, how that played in taking down the mob in many areas such as narcotics, loan sharking, and gambling. Also discussed drugs and its abuse and how the formation of the Bureau of Narcotics provided some framework in regulating and putting laws into place regarding the distribution of drugs. In the Essay 4, this module addressed 3 areas of concern: control of firearms, starting with the first regulations in 1934 with the National Firearms Act. This assured that all firearms are registered to all dealers and all dealers are licensed. Then in 1954, the Mutual Act was passed to regulate the import and export of firearms. It's a fine line to follow in keeping up with the Second Amendment. And then it discussed science and technology, the greatest impact in law enforcement dealing with computers, information systems, and computer engineering. Third was national strategy, which required many steps to become a success, such as planning, preparation, and implementation. Essay 5, this module basically discussed grants, wiretapping, and firearms involving felons. Area of grants involved basically training programs and new technology to improve and strengthen areas in law enforcement. Wiretapping, where a commission was formed by the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and the President to ensure operations are reviewed and guidelines are followed, which can be a thin line in wiretapping if you're presenting it in court. In regard to firearms, President Johnson declared any felon, anybody with mental incompetence, any illegal alien could not possess a firearm or transport one. Essay 6 discussed organized crime and the Crime Act that was established to eliminate organized crime, and the person that assisted in this matter was Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Back in 1963, he also helped establish the Witness Protection Program, so those that are involved in organized crime turned evidence against them were also safe and put into the Witness Protection Program. Essay 7, this module deals with grants on a federal level for law enforcement and corrections regarding educational advancement. Local and state will assist to better their staff and department and allow us to form effective task forces. It can only help us the more that our law enforcement and corrections have the education to continue things that are out there that are new that can help prevent crime. Essay 8, this module addresses the deinstitution of status offenders in the juvenile sector. In 1974, Congress passed the Juvenile Justice and Delinquents Act. This established basically uniform standards to be followed by all. It was also to keep them from safe and reinforce good behavior through basically community service. The JJDPA, as it's also referred to, serves children, families, and the community to assure the protection of children is maintained along with public safety. Essay 9, this module basically reviews Armed Career Criminal Act in regard to the sentencing. The sentencing reform was addressed through the Sentencing Reform Act. Essay 10, this module addressed child abuse and sexual assault and how Child Protective Services plays a big role. Treatment and prevention need to be at the forefront regarding victims' rights. If they come forward, they need to be protected against any repercussions for themselves or their family. Essay 11 dealt with the death penalty that's legal in all 50 states. The last lethal injection was in 2003. This also reviewed community-oriented policing, ensuring all that share in the responsibility of problem solving and prevention with officer discretion. Essay 12, this module summarized the building of trust needed with officers, how to develop that, and interacting with the community. They need to know that complaints are assessed in a timely manner and that every time they bring things to the police, that they do take it seriously. Finally, in the end, Essay 13. It revolved around community policing and crime reduction. Shifts from traditional reactive response to the community-oriented approach. This is a proactive approach in policing. There's an area of wellness and safety for law enforcement in a productive manner. And finally, mental health and PTSD are areas that need to come to light and treatment provided so that women that are in law enforcement out on the street know they can actually come in and have a counselor or talk to peer groups regarding their concerns so that their wellness as a whole can also provide the best policing as possible. I appreciate it. I enjoyed this course, and I hope you have a great Christmas.